Hey everyone, hope you had a great holiday. Sorry I didn't do any videos during the time, but I was enjoying the break with my family. But hey, first video of the year, let's get to this.
Look at the sky, it's
Before the break, I finished my finals week of this semester at Penn State. While I didn't work on my comic in the student paper for the last few weeks due to studying and projects, I read the paper. When I wasn't doing anything, I noticed the setup of some of the comics in the paper, whether they are 1 or 5 panel comics. Soon after I finished the paper, I went to Webtoons to check out my own comic, and saw that some of the comics that I really like had different panel styles and setup. As an illustrator, it is our job to create a constant stream of clarity with imagery, pacing, dialogue, composition, gestures, and the list goes on and on. These choices typically break down into 5 types, and to understand these types I would be referencing the breakdown presented by Scott McCloud, creator of Zot and writer of 12 issues of the Superman comics. Now I'm not saying that Scott created this, but as far as I have found, he is the first one to notice that cartoonists and illustrators do this. In Scott's lectures and his book Making Comics, he says the 5 types of choices are the choice of movement, choice of frame, choice of image, choice of words, and the choice of flow. Now I may create episodes later that will touch more on these subjects, but to keep it short, I will talk about the basics of each of these choices and the rules. So in the choice of movement, there are 6 panel-to-panel transitions within the comic. Now these rules can be used in any combination or set of each one, depending on how you want to show the transition of time. The 6 transitions are movement to movement, action to action, subject to subject, scene to scene, aspect to aspect, and non sequitur. Each of these transitions, they show a flow of time between panels. Now I'm not going to go too deep on this, but it's kind of basic. It shows how time can pass between movements as simple as taking a couple of steps. Movement to movement shows changes in movement such as moving a hand. Action to action shows something someone is doing in a scene, like in one panel someone hits someone, then they run away in the next. Aspect to aspect shows multiple scenes or paints the picture of the setting. Subject to subject shows the subjects of a scene in different settings, like a cop getting a donut and a robber pulling up in front of the bank. Scene to scene shows one scene to another. At first the characters are at a bar, then it's a picture of Mordor, and non sequitur is randomness altogether. Now choice of frame is the choice of how the setup of the frames will affect your images. It's how the setup of the frame works with these images to affect the reader's connection to emotions and the feelings in the comic. For this part, it's best to use an example. I'm using Dragon Ball Z since it's so familiar to a lot of comic and manga fans across the world, and it's older so there's no spoilers. In these pages you can see how the frames create a focus on certain parts of the story. You see how the massive hole Frieza created, then close-ups to both Goku and Frieza to show the facial expressions and the body language. Both of these frame setups show what aspects of the scene are important. Movies and shows do this quite often with close-ups and zoom-outs. Choice of image is mainly how the images you pick or use helps move the story or show events within the plot. It's a choice of how the artist wants to portray the characters and their reactions to the world. Going back to Dragon Ball Z manga, Akira's choice of adding King Kai's reaction as he watches the fight and listens to what Frieza says is or was similar to what some of us who were reading for the first time reacted to Frieza's word. Which is the next choice? The choice of word may be from the writer of a comic or the illustrator, like me, is the writer. No matter who writes the plot and the conversations between the characters, the written language of the work has to tell the narrative and push the story forward. But it also has to make the reader believe the story and the characters seem real or similar to us in one way or another, and I'll touch base on this concept a little more in another episode. The speech and narrative must also create the world and the immersion of the reader, and this can be hard sometimes, but the art can help with this. Finally, we look at choice of flow. The choice of flow in a comic is how the reader reads the panels in the flow of the comic. This may change from how the audience reads. For example, in Western comics, we generally read left to right, top to bottom, but in manga, they follow how the people of Japan read, right to left. So the flow is a little different, but is generally the same, one side to the other, top to bottom. The flow can be different from this, but is the basic form. Take this page from Scott Pilgrim by Brian Lee O'Malley, where the top two rows were on a separate flow from the bottom panels. This disconnection actually plays out well for this scene, creating two scenes within the same scene. Well, looks like we're all out of time. Catch you guys next week, and have a happy new year.
I wanted to make this city something better than it is. You took it!